really, what we got to cover starts with last night, because you and I on this show talked about the happy accident with the visual.
Yeah.
A photograph that will be screen printed on shirts and then turned into actual currency that you can use to buy things. Like, you know what? If they got rid of some of the old racist presidents on the dollar bill and they put bloody faced Becky Lynch on there.
Becky bucks. I would happily pay for everything in Becky bucks.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's kind of going downhill, but the Becky bucks we can work on.
Yep.
I mean, there was Dogecoin at one point, for the love of God. So last night, you and I had this conversation, and I said, man, it's only a happy accident if Becky can go. And at that point, as you know, I was getting a little bit of info, like Becky's being checked out backstage, and she's not in a vehicle with the rest of the Smackdown girls. They grabbed her and said, no, you're going to come through this curtain.
Yeah.
It wasn't that great. I learned this afternoon, Alex, that Becky Lynch had sustained a concussion, and I was told a broken nose. As we learned, Alex, it was actually a broken face.
Broken face
is what they said.
My concern was orbital bone, but I guess that usually refers to the outer edge. And down here where she got hit, that's just your face. There's no that's just a face. There's not really fun scientific-y way of saying that. That's a face break right there.
So last night, the initial reaction I was getting backstage is the typical. It ain't ballet. Shit happens. No big deal. Well, then the footage came through.
Yep.
And then the recounts from other people in the Battle Royal came through. And Nia Jax has heat on her now. And perhaps appropriately so. I'm not even going to say perhaps appropriately so. Definitely appropriately so. This is a situation that we're in where people who get in the ring with her have often ended up hurt. And the reputation of that has been such for quite a while, including several situations over the past couple of months. I mean, my God, I don't know how to put this any differently. And we were told at Fightful.com and had the news up before anybody else this afternoon, Becky's out of the match. Well, that's bad news. That's bad news. And it was all speculation until this crowd video, which is up on Fightful.com, of Nia Jax clocking Becky Lynch emerged. WWE went all in on this. They're like, well, if this is going to be out there, and to their credit, I think it's a good idea.
Yes.
They're like, if this is out there and Becky's over to this level, let's go ahead and get some heat on Nia. And they did it, and they showed some real clear angles of this punch, Alex. This was not a work punch.
Nope.
Like, there was nothing worked about this. It was a closed fist strike to the face, Alex.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that I have a lot of stage acting experience, and I do. And I've also been a fight choreographer in plays that have fights in them. You do a lot of like old-timey Shakespeare stuff. Sometimes there's big battles. Like you do a production of Macbeth, usually they're going to have a bunch of guys swinging around dull broadswords. And one-on-one, it's really easy to choreograph because, you guys learn their moves. There's no problems. But sometimes directors come to me and they say, all right, we're going to have 12 guys on stage fighting. They're going to one guy's going to fight this guy, then he's going to move over to fight that guy. I'm like, okay, you've got to build in a lot more rehearsal time for this. Because when it just breaks down to like everyone's doing all this stuff, it's really hard to keep everyone in line and not have somebody accidentally
Alex,
smack in the face.
We were poking fun. Sorry to interrupt, but I kind of poked fun last week about the brawl on stage, about how Titus and Bobby Lashley were resolved to pummeling underhooks in over and over, because they're like, you got a trained fighter and a guy who's been wrestling for a decade, and they're like, I don't know what to do with my hands during this brawl.
Yeah,
like they weren't sure what to do, and
they did know enough to not use that hand and just throw a closed fist at somebody's face if that person is the biggest star in the WWE right now. Like that's a problem. I mean, I understand she's just out there doing it, like she wasn't malicious, but this also brings up something we should probably have talked about last night, where they mentioned that Ember Moon came up in this business idolizing Nia Jax.
Missed that.
Ember Moon has been doing this shit since 2007, back when Nia Jax had no inkling that she was ever going to be a wrestler.
Yeah.
It's insulting to say that. And the whole thing is that, okay, fine, Nia Jax is a little older, but there are other bigger women you could use to get over the idea of this massive woman who can throw other women around. You have somebody in NXT UK, in Rhea Ripley, who's been doing this longer than Nia Jax and is 12 years younger than Nia Jax. You have other people you can use that for your, your giant, immovable, irresistible force thing that aren't going to smack somebody in the face and maybe put them out for experienced periods of time.
I fully expect anytime we speak negatively about any female wrestler, there's going to be the weird railroading and stuff. This boils down, I think, a lot to nepotism, and it does. And yeah. I had one person say, The Rock's cousin, you don't see a lot of his fake cousins doing this, but you see his real one doing this. Yeah. And man, does she have ability and potential? Damn right she does. She has a lot of potential. She had a real good match with Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
And regardless of how good Ronda Rousey is early in her career, you can't have that type of match on accident with a person who has been wrestling for 3.5 years like Nia Jax and a person who hasn't been wrestling for 6-7 months. Like you have to have some level of ability and talent and potential to do that. However, it's happened several times. She threw an elbow drop to the back of Bayley when Bayley was seated up. She planted the wrong leg when trying to hit a backbreaker on Asuka and just dropped her straight down. Yeah. She threw Tamina or Zelina out to the point. Zelina just came back tonight.
Yeah, she's been out.
It's happened. And we had this discussion about Brie Bella. I mean, the thing is, Nia's had those couple of breaks off, and I want her to get better. I do, because there is potential in her, but I've not seen the improvement. I've not seen her work get better since she came to the main roster, which a lot of people thought it was a little early. Not only that, you look back at her reaction when her name was called and the legitimate surprise, maybe a little bit of her being overwhelmed.
Yeah. Listen, I've been much more of an advocate for Nia Jax over the years of this podcast than you have, mainly because I loved what I saw in her in NXT. I love because but those matches, they get worked and worked and worked and worked so that they're polished before they come in front of an audience because they have that time. And her stuff that she did with Bayley, where Bayley finally beat her with a guillotine, the storytelling that match was great. I loved her series of matches with Asuka. I thought those were all really good. It told different stories. And I loved the idea that with a woman of her size, the in-ring storytelling you could do, there was virtually a whole nother avenue of things you could do with a woman of her size in the ring. So I was excited to see where she would improve when she came up to the main roster. And I don't know how much she has improved. I saw a lot of improvement in her matches in NXT, but once you get up to the main roster, you don't have all that time in the Performance Center, all those reps, getting the hang of everything, working with people who are just working with you one-on-one. And it suffered for, in my opinion, what I've seen.
So other things that I had heard this afternoon, and I had posted either on my Twitter or Fightful Select or Fightful.com, FightfulWrestling.com. Check it out, my friends. We've got a lot of live viewers right now. So Becky had a big black eye. There were some people on Reddit who were like, oh, this can't be taken seriously because you don't know that she has a concussion. Or, I mean, that's what I said. I had heard via a source she had a concussion, and they suspected she had a broken nose. However, I am not Becky Lynch's doctor, and I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm not going to pretend to have access to her medical records. I can tell you that people backstage assumed she had a broken nose.
Yeah.
WWE says a broken face, and I tried to get a hold of WWE today. I reached out for comment and nothing, and understandably so, because it's going to be worked into a big storyline. The Liv Morgan, Brie Bella situation, they were able to clear that up very quickly because that wasn't going to be worked into anything for that night's SmackDown. This was a big hook to get them to get people to tune into the show. Yeah. And I was told there is heat on Nia. There wasn't immediately last night, but there is now. But here's the thing. I also had one wrestler tell me, yeah, there's heat on Nia, but who will say anything to her? Not that they're afraid that she'll beat them up or anything. It's just afraid of the long-lasting ramifications of saying something like that. Now, that being said, a lot of people would say, oh, well, because of The Rock. Well, the thing is, you think Dwayne Johnson's going to take time out of his day to politically bury somebody who is working nonstop? No, he's not going to do that, because what Dwayne Johnson does very well is make sure everybody likes him.
Yes.
And it's not a non-genuine thing. It is a very genuine thing. He is widely adored by almost everybody in wrestling for his ability to do that and to do nice things and to help put people over. People you would have no idea that he even knew about,
Right.
He'll go out of his way to put over on Twitter. But there still is that fear because of the connection and because of her place of that. And hey, I hope she gets better. I hope she improves. I think that, I criticize Tamina's work an awful lot and her human statue performance on Raw, but she didn't do anything out of her depth.
Nope.
I did an interview with Christopher Daniels of Ring of Honor a few weeks ago, and he's 48 almost. He's almost 50, and he's still wrestling. And I'm like, what's your secret to longevity? You don't get hurt. Nothing ever happens. And he says, you know what I don't do? I don't do anything in minute 3 that I can't do at minute 30 in a match. And because of that, I don't get hurt. Nobody else gets hurt. And I get a long career out of it. That's not always the case. And it's not always realistic to do that either. But I think that's some pretty good advice from a guy who's done almost everything in the wrestling business outside of WWE. So here's the hoping that everything ends up okay. Becky Lynch busted up, man.